This is Stewart Wills with Science's Web and New Media Editorial Group. Today, Science publishes a special issue on human conflict, and as a tie into that special issue, we're very pleased today to have three scientists to join us in a panel discussion specifically about the topic of ethnic conflict, where it comes from, and perhaps what can be done about it. Mahzarin Banaji, a psychologist at Harvard University, has studied individual innate human prejudice and bias against outgroups. Debraj, an economist at New York University, has looked at regional intergroup conflict through the lens of economics. And Richard Crisp, a social psychologist at the University of Kent, focuses on the psychological dimensions of social diversity and intercultural contact. Also on the line is Science contributing editor Elizabeth Culotta, who reports on the roots of racism in a story in the special issue. And Elizabeth, maybe that's a good place to start, sort of the individual level, whether we're, if you will, sort of hardwired for ethnic bias.
Thank you, Stewart. So in the story I wrote on the roots of racism, I talked with Mahzarin Banaji and others about how racism is really one aspect of a much broader prejudice that might be considered as sort of in-group love and out-group hate. Mahzarin, can you talk to us a little bit about those terms and what they mean?
Sure, and let me just start by saying that we think that the in and out groupness of our perceptions really is part of the basic architecture of our cognition. Most species, almost any living organism, needs to know the difference between two sets of things in their world. So a robin has just laid eggs in a nest outside my front door, and for that robin, it's very important to know the difference between another robin and an eagle and me. That's what it needs to know. That's what I, as a human being, need to know when I navigate the social universe. Who are the people like myself? Who are the people a little bit different from me? And sometimes those markings are visible and very obvious. So something like race is an interesting example because of the way we look at race, at least now. I think multiracial people are creating a little bit of chaos for us because we can't easily put people into these categories that we're used to. But in general, we're good at knowing what sets of things are. Tables and chairs, but also Mormons and Protestants, Hutu and Tutsi, black and white. And out of that come certain types of feelings that at some default level seem to be more pro the in-group or more pro people who are like ourselves. Okay? Now that story is fairly robust. It's one of the most ubiquitous results in psychology, and Richard Crisp can actually tell you a lot about this. He's an expert on questions of social identity and this particular kind of love and hate for the in and the out group and how easily it emerges in what are called minimal groups. So you don't even have to tell somebody or take these two big groups like Hutu, Tutsi, black, white, etc. You can just put people into two little rooms and say, you are the A's and they're the B's, and you can create something like in and out groupness among people who are relatively the same. So it's a very fundamental way in which we carve the social world.
Mahzarin is absolutely right. It's incredibly easy in the laboratory to create prejudice, if you like. And the studies that she was talking about by Tajfel and colleagues in the 1970s had a huge impact. They showed that, in fact, quite shocking results at the time, that you could create essentially prejudice, dislike towards someone in another group in the laboratory when that group was simply created out of having a different coloured T-shirt or being given a red pen rather than a blue pen, or simply even by tossing a coin. There does seem to be this innate tendency for us to like our in-groups, things which are similar to us, but to dislike or be wary or be concerned about out-groups, people who are in some way classified as different from us. And there have been hundreds of studies replicating this basic effect.
Is it reasonable to say that we sort of see the world in coalitions, or we're ready to see the world this way, but that who the in-groups and out-groups are can change? Is that the idea?
Yeah, I would say that that's a very good way to put it. We have some kind of a default ability to be able to immediately look at who might be part of the coalition that we belong to and others, but it changes. And I'll give you an example from a species where these coalitions change quite a bit. So in some research that I did with Laurie Santos, it's her lab really that took the lead on this project, and I was a collaborator. But what we looked at were rhesus monkeys who do end up having this very interesting social feature that male members of the group will often leave one social group and move to another. So who used to be part of your in-group is now part of your out-group, and who used to be a part of your out-group is now a part of the in-group. And what we can show is that that system is malleable enough that they will treat a member of the in-group who's now an out-group as an out-group member. They will associate those folks more with nasty things like spiders and snakes rather than good things like fruit and other positive stimuli. So this is a nice little example of how both that there are coalitions and that they are variable and malleable.
And so this obviously has deep evolutionary roots if something like macaques feels this way.
Absolutely. I think it has deep evolutionary roots. It also is hugely shaped by the social circumstances in which we find ourselves. And so I would say it's putting the two side by side and never assuming that it's the innate part of it that's important or just that the social learning part is important. And this is extremely difficult for most ordinary human minds to do. I mean, most of the readers of Science magazine, I would venture, don't even know that there could be a science of something like this. Okay? But we can study, at least from a psychological point of view, we can study the mental mechanisms that kick in. And when we look at those mental mechanisms, we can see evidence both of how deeply these are in us and how ancient they must be. We can see this by looking at other species and comparing them to us. We can look at the behavior of very young children. We can look at the behavior of infants and see that at age 3 months, they're already turning in the direction of those voices or those skin colors or those genders that are more familiar to them rather than the less familiar. And these are the roots of what can eventually become full-blown prejudice, full-blown ethnic conflict. And I think our science has been very carefully mining what the micro sort of roots of these eventual ethnic conflicts are.